Thank you for joining us. My name is Rachel White. I'm a board certified behavior analyst at the Center for Human Development. And today's topic is about preparing for the holidays. So you may be supporting learners who struggle with some of the changes that come up during the holiday season. We often have different routines, different expectations. There might be travel involved. And so what I'd like to do is provide you with some strategies that may make preparing for the holidays easier for the learners that you support. So the first thing is that when we are preparing for the change, we need to think about what's going to be different for our learner. If your learner is school aged, they may be out of school during some of these holidays. So that may mean that they have more downtime or unstructured time. You might be traveling to visit family, and therefore there are different types of expectations in travel that you might need to prepare your learner for. You might have guests that are coming to visit you, and with guests, that might mean that you have to rearrange the way you do things. I have guests coming next week, and that means that we rotate bedrooms because we don't have enough. We don't have a designated guest bedroom, so we move things around. That's going to create a change for my learners, my kids in my house. So think about what those changes might be so that you know what you need to prepare your learner for. Also, you want to model the attitude that you want to see. It can be stressful, and there might be a lot of last minute changes, and maybe you are feeling the stress of some of the expectations of the holiday season. But if you are exuding a lot of stress, your learner is going to see that you're stressed, and they may also then feel stressed by the changes. So try your best to model the attitude that you want to see. If you want your learner to be excited or feeling very positive about the upcoming holidays and what changes those might be, you should model that to them and around them so that they see that this is something to be excited and happy about. You also can frame it positively when you start talking with your learner, when you start preparing them. You can acknowledge that some aspects might be more challenging, right? I know that you have to share a bedroom with your sibling because grandma and grandpa are coming into town. I understand that that is going to be a little bit difficult. However, it's really fun to have grandma and grandpa around, and this also means that you and your sibling can have maybe a secret fort in your room, or you guys can play together a little bit more. So try to find the positive aspects and frame the changes in a positive fashion. So when you're talking with your learner, especially for learners that have good verbal or vocal communication skills, you can do a lot of this vocally and through talking to them. So go over the expectations. Here's what's going to happen. We are traveling to this place. We're going to get on the airplane. We're going to go stay at your aunt and uncle's house. Or here's who's coming to visit us. Here's when they're going to arrive. Here's what things are going to look like. Answer their questions, right? Maybe they have questions about how long people are going to stay, or can they bring their favorite toy, or do they have to sit at the kids' table, or are they old enough to sit at the grown-up table? Whatever their questions are, listen to them, answer their questions. And if you don't know the answer, then tell them, I don't know. Let's look into that. Let's ask. Let me call or text and find out what that's going to look like. You should go over their concerns, right? If they express concerns, well, I'm afraid that I won't get time to do blah, 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 or that I will have to eat food that I really don't like. Go over those concerns, brainstorm with them. What are some ways that we can work through that particular concern? Are there strategies or plans that we can have? Do we need to come up with like a secret code word where then I will, as your caregiver, I will know that that means that you're at your maximum, and I'll make up a reason for you to go and take a break from somebody, right? Whatever it might be, brainstorm some ideas together. And especially for learners who may have more limited communication skills, you can practice it ahead of time. So maybe you role play some of the activities that they're going to need to do differently. Now we say role play, so you could act it out, right? You've got maybe young children who haven't been on a plane before. Then maybe you're going to pretend, hey, let's pretend like we're going to go on a plane ride. And you move all the chairs in your dining room or your living room and you make it look like a plane, and you practice going through the security and having to take off their shoes. I guess maybe little kids don't have to take off their shoes, but whatever that looks like, and you practice some of those aspects. Therefore, they're better prepared, even if they don't necessarily have the language to be able to talk about their concerns or ask their questions. For some learners, you might look at stories. Sometimes they're called social stories, but any of those like books, hey, we're going on a plane ride. If you look at bookstores, they have a lot more, usually they're in the kids section, but a lot more books around maybe specific changes that somebody might experience. Maybe there's things about your first plane ride. Maybe there's things about specific holiday traditions that you do. And you could get a story and you could start reading that as like a bedtime story, or reading that story with your learner to, again, kind of help plan ahead. So try to start going over what the changes are going to be, what the expectations are ahead of time. Now, sometimes you may have a learner who struggles with the concept of time. How far in advance, when is that change going to occur? And that might mean that if you start talking about something, they think it's happening right now. So it's really good with those learners to introduce some sort of visual support, like a calendar that you can mark off and X out the days, and then count how many days are left for then when that event is going to occur. Now, it is really good for holidays to try to build up the anticipation, that positive anticipation, a little bit, especially if your learner may view the changes as potentially more negative. So you might want to start earlier with some of the aspects of the celebration, maybe their favorite parts. So my kid likes to put up the decorations early, and so maybe we start decorating early so they start looking forward to the other aspects that come with that holiday season. You might decide to spread out the celebration instead of trying to cram everything into 1 or 2 days. Maybe you do different bits and pieces across a week, or you do different steps that build up to the big event. Spread it out across more days. That way, it not only is it then something that can kind of build a little bit, but also that means that the learner can get those pieces in maybe smaller chunks so they're not completely overwhelmed by if we try to cram everything into 1 or 2 days. You might look at alternative ways to celebrate. If there are particular uh, parts of your tradition that the learner struggles with, maybe you can look and see, well, are there alternatives to that? I'm going to use food as an example. Maybe there are certain parts of your tradition that include certain foods that the learner really struggles with trying, eating, smelling, whatever it is, right? Are there new or additional foods that you could incorporate into your tradition that would be more appealing to the learner? So in our family, we do have turkey, but we also have individuals who do not consume animal products, and therefore we make a protein that is not animal based, right? So that would be like an example. What's an alternative way, or what's an additional thing that you can add that can help accommodate some of those trickier parts of particular celebrations? And similarly, add something new. Is there something new that you could add as part of your tradition that or your celebration that the learner is really excited about? Is there some piece to it that they can add that then makes that holiday celebration more exciting for them and makes them feel more included? So not necessarily getting rid of old things, but just exploring what other possibilities there might be. So I mentioned some visual supports earlier, like a calendar to mark things out. And visual supports are a really good way to help prepare learners, even if they have good communication skills. We all tend to use our calendars or our phones or a to-do list or some other types of visual cues to help us remember what we need to do or remember what's coming up next for us. So visual supports can include pictures or words or any combination thereof and show the plan for the day, the week, or that particular event. I mentioned a calendar that you could mark off as you count down the days, or you can circle certain days of when something is coming. You could include like a visual picture schedule where it has pictures of, first we're going to get on the airplane, then we're going to sit in our seat, then we're going to get off the airplane, then we're going to see grandma and grandpa, we're going to ride in grandma and grandpa's car, and we're going to go to grandma and grandpa's house and sleep in their house. Right? Maybe those are the important parts of the travel routine for your learner. Having a visual, whether it's pictures or written, is just helpful as like a reference for your learner to then look back to and maybe get reassurance about what's coming up next. And then maybe they don't have to ask you questions many times over and over again. So what's next? You can refer them to the visual support. When I was a kid and we drove in our car on vacations, we would always do the thing in the back seat where the kids are asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And maybe you could create some sort of map or visual that has the names of the places that you're going to drive through first. And every time you see one of those places, we're in, we're going through Soldotna. So Let's mark it off. Okay, what town are we looking for next? And then, oh, and now we're here, and now we're at Homer. That's our end. We're there. So maybe you have something that the kids can reference. And you can mark it off or take the items off as you pass them or as you do those pieces. If you're not already using some sort of visual support, then it might be helpful to introduce that visual to their regular routine before you use it to change, just so that they understand that the visual system describes what's coming up next. So for a learner that's maybe older or has had some experience with written or picture schedules, even if they're not currently using it, you might not need to set one up for their regular routine because they're already familiar with their regular routine. But if you've never used visual supports for your learner before, then it's a good idea to at least provide it as an example. So here's our regular day. You're gonna get up, you're gonna do your hygiene, you're gonna go to school. I'm gonna pick you up from school at the end of the day. You're gonna come home and do your homework. We're gonna eat dinner, and then you're gonna go to bed, right? Like, here's our regular day. See how when you do each of these things, we're marking them off. Okay, now this is a non-school day, right? So now here's what our routine's gonna look like. Now that you kind of know what it means in your regular day, here's what it looks like when we have these changes. You can also practice introducing the concept of a last minute change by adding a surprise, either a picture or a word, into that visual schedule. So especially for learners that struggle with those unexpected changes during the holidays, we might have unexpected changes, right? The turkey got burnt. We are not eating turkey. We have to order pizza. This is a big change for your learner because they really like turkey, right? Whatever it is. You can start to introduce that concept more easily by introducing visual supports into their regular routine. So in my regular routine, I might have wake up, hygiene, go to school, get picked up from school, and then I might add something that says surprise, and then homework and dinner. So we've been using the regular one, but now I added the word surprise. When we get to that surprise, I can make a little change. And ideally, you'd start with fun things. So the surprise is like, hey, surprise, you can have an extra snack today, or I bought your favorite candy, so you can have a little bit of your candy right now, or surprise, you can watch your favorite show before you start your homework, right? So you build it in where surprise is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And then you can, over time, over practice, if they're good with those, then you can start mixing it where sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a neutral thing. Surprise, dad picked you up today instead of, mom picking you up today. And maybe that doesn't make a difference for the learner, right? But they've practiced, then they know that a surprise is not always a bad thing. It's just a change. It just means something is different. Then when you are in your holiday schedule, if something changes, you can stick that little surprise, or you can write that surprise onto their schedule and then let them know what that means. And they'll have a little bit more of an understanding and a concept that sometimes things change and we don't know about them very far in advance. And again, I talked about this, but remove or mark off the activity when it's finished. You can scratch it out if it's, you're just writing these on paper. If it's, a fancy laminated system with all the pictures, you can move those. It doesn't have to be fancy though. It's literally just something that they can look at and reference back to. And if need be, you can adapt it to match any unexpected changes. All right, so some other things that may occur during the holidays is longer wait times, different sorts of transitions. So some strategies that might help off and on throughout the holidays would be to assist with trying to reduce the number of transitions and reduce the amount of wait time. So there's a few things that you can do. For learners who are going to struggle with so many changes back and forth and back and forth, try to adjust the plan so that the learner doesn't have to transition as much. Now, other people might still be going back and forth or doing this and then switching to that and then back to this other thing, but maybe for the learner, they're only involved or called into the certain aspects that that they need to be, and not as much back and forth. So I guess my mind is stuck on food right now, but thinking about a preparation for a large meal. Sometimes, depending upon what you're cooking or how that routine goes, you might have a lot of times where people are in the kitchen and then stuff is cooking and people are going to be, sitting over here and doing this other thing, maybe playing games, maybe talking, maybe watching shows. But then when the timer goes off or the food needs attending to, they have to go back to the food. So they have to pause this activity to go back to this other activity. And maybe there's a lot of back and forth. If your learner is participating, again, maybe in this example, they're helping to cook some of their favorite foods so that they're participating and so that they know that they have things that they like to eat. Maybe you arrange the schedule so that their items are going to occur all at one time. They can be in the kitchen, they can do all of their cooking, and then they can leave the kitchen and they can go and do whatever the other activities are, and continue to do those until everybody's ready to go and eat. So just reducing how many back and forth times they need to go would be an example of trying to reduce those transitions. For learners who struggle with waiting, maybe you try to adjust the plan so that there's as little wait time as possible. I know we do this in my family with the younger children. If we're having a big holiday meal that's like at 1 or 2 p.m., a lot of times the adults are just going to eat that as their lunch, or maybe they even skipped breakfast and that's their meal for the day. But the children are not going to be able to wait that long, and so we would keep the regular like breakfast and lunch times, and maybe we just make a little bit of a smaller lunch so that they're not full for the big meal, but we still want to reduce the wait time, so we're not having them sit there and wait longer and longer until the food is ready. We might also do things like something my family has done for a holiday event. We might move the opening of presents portion to pretty early after the kids wake up, so that the kids don't have to wait very long for them to get to open their presents. And then if the adults want to wait and open theirs later, that's fine, but we don't have the kids sitting around waiting on the adults for a long time. So just some examples of how you might try to adjust the plan. Also, you need to be realistic about what your learner can and can't tolerate. If your learner struggles with certain aspects. Uh, the holidays are not necessarily the time to push them for a goal or skill that they haven't really demonstrated before. In fact, the holidays might be a time to go back a step and require even less of them than you would necessarily in their regular routine. And that's just because it's very different. So we want to set our learners up for success. So trying to think about the schedule, trying to think about what that looks like for your learner, in order for them to be as likely as possible to be successful with that routine and those expectations. It's also really helpful to have preferred items or activities to help for when you do need to wait or to transition. So even though everybody else, the grown-ups, might be in the kitchen managing the food, it's a good idea to have the children have some activities that they can be doing, maybe even have an adult or an older teen or somebody kind of in charge of like coordinating and keeping the kids busy. And in this example, I'm just using general families. These aren't even necessarily learners who need extra support, but during the holidays, being out of their regular routine, every learner might need more support than they normally would. So trying to find those alternative activities, trying to find things for them to do while they wait, or things that you can use that have been successful in the past to help your learner transition from one activity to the next. One of those things, or some of those things that might be helpful for those transitions, would be to give that advance notice of what change is coming up and what are the expectations. For example, in 10 minutes, we need to clean up the toys and get in the car to go to grandma's house, right? So maybe they have the toys while you are finishing the food and you are loading things up in the car, but you're giving them that warning. Okay, in 10 minutes, we're going to clean up and then we're going to drive across town to grandma's house. So you're telling them the time and you're telling them what you're expecting of them. You may use those visual timers or just auditory timers to signal the transition. I'm setting a phone alarm or I'm setting the kitchen timer. When it goes off, that's when we need to start putting on our coat and our shoes and getting in the car. Make sure that you are allowing enough time for your learner to transition, ideally without rushing. And again, I know during the holidays, there might be things that, we're trying to do at a certain time, but if it takes longer, then we feel rushed. And this is just one of those things where you kind of need to, again, think about what your learner needs and give them that time. So instead of, if you realize that the food is not going to be ready at the time that you thought it was, and you still want to make it over to grandma's house, you still give the learner the time that they need to transition. So maybe they need to start cleaning up and getting everything ready before you're done with the cooking so that they can take the 15 minutes that they need to get ready or the 10 minutes that they need to get ready while you finish things, and then you're all ready together at the same time. Also, with transitions, remind them of any transition items that they can bring with them, or maybe you're presenting those items at the time that you're giving the instruction. So my kid will often ask, oh, well, can I take this toy with me? Or can I bring this toy with me? So those would be the types of things that maybe I would want to include in the initial instruction. Okay, in 10 minutes, we're going to clean up and get in the car to grandma's house. Remember, you can bring one stuffed animal with you, right? Or whatever it is that helps your learner to transition from one thing to the next. All right, another thing during the holidays that we need to remember is that sometimes we need to take breaks. And maybe this is just a good reminder for ourselves, but also think about for your learner. If they are an individual who maybe has breaks already scheduled into their regular routine, then you're gonna want to schedule in those breaks into their holiday routine. If this is an individual who often has downtime or free time during their regular routine, and now you're going to be changing up that routine, you might need to build in that downtime or unstructured time for them. Also, start thinking about and look for, we call them precursor behaviors, but signals that your learner needs a break, right? Signals that they're starting to get maybe overwhelmed or agitated, and that they should be separate in order to calm down. So some examples of what taking breaks might look like. Maybe there is unstructured time when the learner doesn't need to participate in a holiday event, so they can be in their room, they can be playing with their toys, or they can be doing what they would like to do, and they're not required to participate in a specific thing. So for example, the adults are all in the kitchen cooking, and maybe the children have unstructured time where they can do what they would like, if the children would benefit from that. Another example would be a structured preferred activity with a preferred person in between the less preferred activities. So maybe there's a part of your holiday routine that is challenging for them. Maybe it's a religious service and they have to sit and sit quietly for a longer period of time, that maybe you can, have them engage in that and then follow it with, now you choose what we're doing next, and I'm going to play with you. And then when we're done with this, then we're going to move on to the next piece of our holiday tradition routine. There might need to just be like a room or a location where the learner can step away to avoid the people or the noise. Maybe it just gets too loud and too busy and they need to go have a quiet spot. You want to, if you're traveling and you're not already in your own home, you want to look for like, what is that going to be? I supported a teenager, and we had, and he had agreed, he'd come up with it, that he wants to just always have the option to go back out to the car and just sit in the car for a little while to kind of like put himself together if things are becoming too much for him. So figure out what that's going to look like. Where is a safe location or a room where everyone knows, okay, the learner's there, that means they need a break, we're going to let them chill out for a while, we will check on them later, right? If you're at your home, then this might be like that you still have some nap time or some quiet time for those learners who need that, right? And again, that is designated as a quiet space or a calm space for them to be able to go to. So maybe there's a lot of kids running around and your learner needs some time, quiet time in their room, then you arrange it so that they can be left alone in their room in order to get some of that quiet time or that distance from people, in order to really take that break. Keeping in mind that we are expecting maybe different things from our learner than we normally would, it's really important to remember that reinforcement and rewards are helpful in getting people to change their behavior, even if it's temporary. So when you know that something is going to be challenging, be prepared to reinforce or reward them for engaging with that activity. Um, First then language is a really great way to set those expectations. So first we're going to eat the food, and we're going to try a bite of whatever is put on our plate, and then you can have dessert, and pick your dessert, right? Or first, we're going to sit quietly through the religious service, and then we're going to go home and we're going to open one present, right? Something like that, whatever it is. And maybe it's not a reward that's built into the routine. Maybe it's something additional that you are providing just to help them to be successful through the activity. So I need you to, walk quietly onto the plane. I need you to sit down. I need you to buckle up. And then I'm going to give you the iPad to watch your shows, right? Or whatever it is. If your learner is used to using token systems or point systems, you can continue to do that. You might just think about making it easier to earn the points or tokens, or making the rewards less expensive or sooner, easier to earn, basically, right? Because again, we're asking them to do something that's out of their normal routine. It might be more challenging for them. Therefore, it would be good if we could make reinforcement a little bit more frequent for them. You should always be providing descriptive praise for what they are doing well. So even if you're not adding anything tangible or activities or anything like that, that descriptive praise is really helpful, and your attention and praise can be rewarding in and of itself. Thank you for helping clear the dishes. Thanks for waiting so patiently when the food took longer than we expected. I really like how you got your coat and your boots on when I said it was time to get ready to go. All of those things are examples of descriptive praise. So not just good job, good job, good job, but good job what? What did they do? You don't want to threaten to take away or remove rewards. Set it up so either the learner earns it and you deliver it, or if they didn't, you just move on. There's not really a conversation around why you didn't get this thing, or if you don't do that, then you're not going to get this other thing, because that really changes the interaction from a positive one to a negative one, and it can make people become maybe a little bit defensive, or just try to get into some sort of like a control or a power dynamic. And we're trying to make things easier for the holidays. So, just set things up, provide the praise. If there's some items or activities that you can arrange that can function as reinforcers or rewards for your learner, then build those in. But if they don't get it, if they aren't doing well, don't threaten to take it away. Just move on. Try to find something that can be praised and reinforced. So even if they are struggling with other aspects, is there anything that you can find that they're doing right in the moment, right? Or is there anything that you can find that you can praise them for that aspect? And that can be challenging, but again, we've got to remember this is a challenging time for our learners. Their schedules are disrupted. Our schedules are disruptive. We might have completely different expectations, and we might be under a lot of stress. They might be under stress too. So look for the positives, highlight the positives to try to keep the interactions and the holiday routines in general as positive as we can. So, as I was just saying, try to reduce the stress. First of all, try to manage your expectations for the situation. Be realistic about the skills that your learner has right now. Obviously, we're always wanting to help our learners to improve their skills and to be able to participate in more things, including our family traditions and holidays. However, we do need to be realistic about what our learners can do right now. And so we want to set them up for success right now. And maybe in the future, we can get to some different expectations. So, one of the things with my child when they were a baby, we struggled with the bedtime routine and falling asleep, and that meant that there were certain things that we just had to adjust in a lot of our routines, but especially when it came to some holiday traditions. So historically, maybe I had participated in late night holiday religious services, but that was not going to be feasible with a baby that we needed to start the bedtime routine at like 7 p.m. in order to even hope that the child was going to be asleep by 10, right? And then they wake up a lot during the night. Like, it's just not realistic. So, what are my expectations? My expectations are not going to be that this child is going to go to sleep different from they have before. I'm going to expect that we need to spend that time in the evening routine, which means I'm not going to be able to participate in those late evening holiday traditions right now at this point in our life. Doesn't mean that we can't in the future, but right now that's not realistic. Pick your battles, right? So, I keep coming back to food, but for example, if you have a learner and you have been working on expanding their ability to try new foods or eat different foods, maybe the holidays is not the time to try to expand their palate a little bit more. Things are going to be out. Maybe they can try them, but maybe this is not the best time to work on that skill. Maybe for the holidays, I'm not worried about at the holiday meal that they actually do try everything on their plate, even though that might be my expectation during our regular dinner routine. Because again, we're trying to reduce our stress. So we're going to make choices as to what things we really do want to work on, really do need our learners to participate in, and which we can let go for right now. Also, you need to take time to take care of yourself. There's the analogy with the oxygen mask, right? You have to put the oxygen mask on you first so that you can help somebody else. So make sure that you're taking time to take care of yourself so that you are not as stressed, and you can then support your learner and help them to not be as stressed also. Ask for additional assistance. Maybe it's formal, like having a respite provider or something like that. Maybe it's just additional support from friends and family, and say, hey, this time's really challenging for us. Can you help me in this way? Also recognize that maybe you need to opt out of events that aren't going to be a good fit for you, for your family, for your learner, again, at this time. And you can let people know, right? Unfortunately, we're really struggling with this aspect right now. We're not going to be able to come to this event. However, please, let's try that again for next year. We'll work on it. We'll see if we can get there for the next holiday event that comes up. You may need to modify some of your traditions to better accommodate your learners' needs. Again, we want our learners to be able to participate fully in our family, in our traditions, in our holidays. But while they are working towards that, what kinds of accommodations and supports can you provide so that they can be successful and so that they also are viewing the holidays as a positive time and not this event that causes them a lot of stress. And then just keep in mind that your learner is not purposely trying to ruin the event. This is challenging for them. They're being asked to do a lot of things differently that maybe they aren't very fluent with. Maybe they don't have all those skills yet. And that if things do go poorly, if they have a tantrum, if they have a meltdown, it's not on purpose. They're not trying to ruin Christmas or ruin the holiday or whatever. They are just really struggling. And if you can kind of keep that in mind, that it's not on purpose, it's just a lack of having the skills and the supports that they need in that moment, hopefully that can help reduce the stress levels as well. So here is my email address, and we will take time for questions.